So in this lab, we're going to be comparing the bond strength of 3 different ionic salts by looking at the temperature changes of water when we dissolve those salts in water. So the first thing that we are going to do, so we're going to start with our potassium chloride salt. And I have a graduated cylinder that I'm going to measure some water into. So I'm going to measure out 50 milliliters of water. This is room temperature water, so it's not hot or cold. It's just had a chance to acclimate to the temperature of the classroom. Okay, there's my 50 milliliters of water. So I'm going to take my thermometer and I'm going to put it into my water, and I'm going to let that sit there just for a minute so I can wait for the temperature to, the thermometer to read the temperature. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and measure out 3 grams of my potassium chloride salt. So I'm going to put my beaker on my balance and zero that out. And then I'm going to measure out 3 grams of potassium chloride. That's a little bit over. Okay, so I have 3.05 grams of potassium chloride that I've measured. So I've got my potassium chloride, and then the temperature of my water is sitting at about 19 and a half, so 19.5 degrees Celsius is what we're going to say the temperature of the water is. So just under 20 degrees Celsius. Okay, so I'm going to add my room temperature water to my potassium chloride. And then stir. I'm not really supposed to be stirring with a thermometer, but I'm just doing some gentle stirring, so I'm being extra careful so that I don't break it, because that wouldn't be good. And my potassium chloride is dissolving in my water, and my temperature is going down. So I'm going to wait until it seems like it's all dissolved and my temperature has stopped changing. Got some little clumps in there. I'm going to see if I can break up. So I think that's as low as my temperature is going to go, and it looks like it went from 19.5 degrees Celsius was its original temperature, and now it's down to 17 degrees Celsius. So it dropped 2.5 degrees. Okay, so that was my potassium chloride. So my solution got colder, and actually if I feel it, it does actually feel colder as well. So let's look at the next one. I'm gonna do this again, but I'm gonna do this with my sodium chloride this time. So I'm gonna start the same way. I'm gonna measure out my 50 milliliters of water. Okay. So I have my 50 milliliters of water. I'm gonna go ahead and put my thermometer back in there. It should be the same because room temperature hasn't really changed. So it should still be the same, right around 19.5 that it was with my potassium chloride. So I'm gonna take my beaker again and set it on my balance, zero it out. And this time we're gonna add 3 grams of sodium chloride. Okay, so I have 3.01 grams of sodium chloride in my beaker, and my room temperature water is measuring at, this time, 19 degrees Celsius, so close to the same. First time it was 19.5, this time it's 19, so off by half a degree Celsius. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to add the water to our beaker, this time with our sodium chloride. Stir very gently to dissolve, because I'm not really supposed to be stirring with a thermometer. This one doesn't seem to be dissolving quite as easily as the potassium chloride, but it's definitely still dissolving. Okay, so my sodium chloride's dissolved. Let's check and see where my temperature's at. So my temperature this time, so it started at 19 degrees Celsius, and this time it's down to 18 degrees Celsius. So it went from 19 to 18 degrees Celsius. This one maybe feels a little cooler, but who knows, that could just be because I know it got colder because the temperature went down. But 1 degree Celsius really isn't a huge temperature change. So it's probably just because I know that that's what it did. So that is my sodium chloride. So it went from 19 degrees Celsius down to 18 degrees Celsius. Okay, and now we're gonna do our last one. Our last one is calcium chloride. So same process, measure out 50 milliliters of water. So there's my 50 milliliters of water. I'm gonna put my temperature or my thermometer in there. First time was 19.5 degrees Celsius. Second time was 19, so that's around what it should be. So I'm gonna measure out my 3 grams of calcium chloride. So calcium chloride looks a little bit different than the other two. So sodium chloride was table salt, so it looked like table salt. Potassium chloride was a little bit finer. And then this is definitely chunkier. So these are more in flakes than really granules. Okay, 3.01 grams of calcium chloride. Okay, so let's check our temperature. Our room temperature water is right at 19 degrees Celsius this time, so it's sticking with the same as our second one. So we've got 19 degrees Celsius as our starting temperature. And then we're gonna add this to our calcium chloride. And stir gently to dissolve. Ooh, this one already feels warm. So just from holding it, it feels warm. But let's go ahead and set it down. It's also dissolving, but the solution's cloudier, which you might be able to see. Looks like it's full of a lot of little bubbles. And it definitely feels warm. Okay, so I think it's all dissolved. Let's see where we're at with temperature. Yep, temperature went up. So we started at 19. We're sitting right now at about 22.5. I'm gonna give it another minute or so and see if it goes up any higher. So the cloudiness seems to be going away a little bit as more and more has dissolved. I think we definitely hit our peak at 22.5 degrees Celsius. So we started at 19 and our final temperature is 22.5 degrees Celsius for calcium chloride. So from here, we can calculate our change in temperature. So we'll do final minus initial for each of them. So for our ones that got colder, we'll see a negative change in temperature. We'll see the temperature go down. For our calcium chloride, we'll see the temperature go up. And then we're gonna analyze that data and see what it tells us.